Prince of Niners Wire, the co-host, one of the head honchos of Candlestick Chronicles. See, I said it there without any kind of stutter. Kyle Madson's in the building, also from 95.7 The Game. Kyle, what's going on, man?
What's up, guys? How you doing?
We're good, man. We're good. And I was telling the people before, you're such a pro. I meant to like hit you up, be like, "Oh, you're still good." It's good. And we know it's every Friday, but I like to check in with my people and make sure it's good. I forgot to do it. I was like, I think Kyle's coming on. I think And everybody's like, nah, Kyle already tweeted it out, man. So I'm saying this guy's a pro. He's a pro.
Yeah, I'm in here, man. If I wasn't going to be here, you guys would know in advance.
Yeah, for sure. We were just talking about preseason football, Niners Vikings on Saturday. And for all intents and purposes, a lot of the Niners starters, if not all of them, got their work in during the week. They probably won't play. We know Trey Lance isn't playing, but are any of the ones going to see work? Brandon Eyuk, Debo, Fred Warner, are they going to play at all, or did they do all their work during the week?
Yeah, I don't think the established starters like that will see a ton of action because you said it. They get these joint practices in, and Brandon Ayuk called them boring, but it's because those practices aren't necessarily for Brandon Ayuk. They're not for Debo Samuel or Fred Warner. The Niners are trying to see what some of their younger guys or their less established guys do against a different team in a practice setting, in a controlled setting. And so now those guys will get the opportunities in games. There's no reason for Fred Warner to play. There's no reason for Nick Bosa to play or Eyuk or anybody like that. So, yeah, if they're established, they're probably out. But a guy like Spencer Burford, the rookie, is probably going to start at right guard. He's probably going to play a lot because he needs those reps.
When you look at this experiment with the Vikings, has there been any like really positives that you've seen? It looked like Bosa's unstoppable, and we see the little clips of that. But is there any positives that just totally stand out?
Not anything that has been like oh, this is a game changer. Quantrez Knight had a really good practice on Thursday. He's an undrafted rookie. So that's kind of interesting. He's playing at the nickel corner spot and at safety. So it's just kind of a name to keep an eye on with their injuries in the secondary. But beyond that, I was not surprised, but given what we heard about the 49ers offensive line struggling to contain the Vikings defensive line, which I think should be pretty good this year. But they're struggling to contain the Vikings defensive line, but you still saw Lance's numbers or stats, the unofficial numbers, were still not bad. Which to me says, okay, some of the stuff he was doing in practice in camp with the Niners was more a product of just trying stuff. Like, okay, that throw's not there, but hey, I'm going to try and fit it in anyways and just kind of see what his arm strength gets him. Right. So it looks like against Minnesota, he stopped that a little bit, and you started to see instead of 6 or 7 of 18, you saw 11 of 18, maybe because he was taking some easier completions. So that's the big kind of, if I had to take one silver lining or positive from it, I think that's probably it.
From everything that I've read and some of the clips I've seen, it feels like it was like what do they say, like just the flat line, not in a bad way, but there was no ups and downs one way or the other in this joint practice. Everybody was kind of just on an even keel. They got their work in. Nobody was spectacular, but nobody was terrible either for the most part. That's how it seems to win. I'm fine with that. I'm sure Kyle also, because it is an NFC opponent, you wasn't doing a whole lot. It was probably just some real simple one-on-ones or some simple, there was no scheme there or anything like that. So it just seemed like they went in there, get some work in and get out of there healthy.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. It's just seeing a different team for a couple of days, hitting somebody else for a couple of days. So I'm with you. Had they gone out and been like, wow, they got murked up by the Vikings, that would have been bad. But their defensive line was still really good. Like James mentioned, Nick Bosa had a huge day on Thursday. That's a good sign. And these sessions are going to make or break their year. If they're in the Super Bowl, we're not going to be like, well, we knew it back in that joint practice. Like, that's not. There was a couple years ago in 2019, their joint practices with the Broncos, because there were still a lot of question marks about the 49ers at that point, right? Because they were coming off that 2018 season where Garoppolo got hurt. Well, that was the practice where their defense like flipped a switch. and Quan Alexander was all over the field, and he's talking all sorts of smack, and their defense just kind of hit a different level in those joint practices.
Yeah,
that's where I think you can really take something away, like, oh, that was a moment. But in this setting with where the Niners are expectations wise, I don't think that. I didn't take a ton away from a like where are they or where are they not.
2019 training camp. That's when Jimmy Garoppolo threw 5 straight interceptions on 5 straight passes. Niners went to the Super Bowl that year. Remember how big of a story that was, though, when that came out that he threw?
The show I was producing at that time, it was Bonta Hill, Matt Steinmetz, and Daryl LaGuru Johnson. God love all of them. It was a meltdown show. Phone lines lit up. Should Mullins start? What is it? It was a disaster. And then he goes out in the game. Remember in that Broncos game, he looked like he'd never played football before.
Yeah,
just looked flustered, not ready. That was a tough few weeks.
Kyle, we're getting, this is going to be week 2, so we're getting down to like the midway point of preseason. Like, what are you seeing as far as the roster shakeup? How is this thing going to work itself out? Is there already like a pretty clear outline of who the 53 will be, and then who will be on the practice squad, or do you think there a lot is still to be decided here in the last 2 weeks?
No, I think so. There's 2 separate things here. I here's how good of a grasp I have on the 53. I put out a 53-man roster the day before roster cuts on Tuesday because I thought, I got a pretty good idea of who's at least going to be around. No, Darquez Dennard, who I thought was going to make the team, got cut right away. So that's where I'm at with that. So no, I think there's they for the most part have their 53 guys. It might be like, let's say 60 players who are realistically battling for roster spots. So that I think they have a pretty good handle on. The thing they still need to figure out though is the order that things are going to go and what the depth chart looks like specifically, and that'll probably get tweaked throughout the year. But is Samuel Womack, the rookie 5th round pick, for sure starting at the nickel? Is Talanoa Hufanga definitely starting at strong safety? It looks like he probably is. Are they sure they want to go with Spencer Burford at right guard? Is Jake Brendel definitely the center going into the year? Like, they only have a couple weeks to figure these things out, but if they're still asking themselves questions, those are, I think, the questions that they're asking.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about that Brandon Eyuk situation. He came out yesterday in his press conference afterwards, and he was, you could tell he was like kind of, now I guess maybe now looking back, you could tell he was kind of over the whole thing. But he tried to be a good soldier, give a nice little PC answer. He's like, yeah, it was a good little get some work in or something like that. And then halfway through the answer, he was just like, to hell with this. He was like, man, this was boring. I wasn't feeling this.
So I feel kind of bad for Eyuk because there's two parts to this. One, shout out to him for the candor. I wish every athlete's answer was that. Like, that was from the heart. And I loved that. But the second half of the answer that didn't make it to the video, and Tracy Sandler of the Fangirl Sports Network included the second half of the answer in her story. He says, like, it was a lot of day one type of stuff. And I touched the ball like 3 times, but I understand the coaching staff has a process. This is part of that process. It's my job to get better with every rep.
Yeah. And
it's like, yeah, you're right. This practice is not for you.
Right.
And so I understand if it's boring. Like, you go from dominating it in Santa Clara to going to Minnesota, and now you're in Eagan, Minnesota, and you're touching the ball 3 times in 2 days. Like, that's probably not that fun.
Right. The other thing that I thought about that, and that's great context because I hadn't heard that as well. But I also feel like training camp has been going on for 4 weeks now. I think this is about the time where guys like Eyuk and maybe some of these are just kind of over training camp. Like we're kind of done with this. Like, let's get to the season.
Alex Boone, the former Niners offensive lineman, also played for the Cardinals and Vikings, was on our show today and talked about that. He was like, by this point of the offseason, you want to play. Like, you're inside of a month until that season opener. You're ready to hit somebody else for real. You're ready to tackle somebody.
Right.
And yeah, if you're Eyuk, this is your third training camp. You think you're gonna go have a breakout year? You're gonna get paid after this season? I don't blame anybody, because I mean, I don't know about you guys. I want to talk about games.
And
And I'm not even out there practicing.
I'm done with training camp at this point.
Yeah, man.
Well, Kyle, I'll ask you the question that no one wants to talk about anymore at all. And that is, what in the world is going to happen to Jimmy Garoppolo? We're seeing some of these situations open up a little bit. You know, the Brown situation has changed dramatically in the last few days. There's going to be an opportunity, but do you think he's going to be on the roster? Well, I know he's not going to be on the roster. Do you think he's going to be waived? Do you think he's going to be traded? What do you think happens?
So if the Browns aren't trading for him, I don't know who's trading for him. I mean, if the 11 games, the Browns are like, yeah, hey, 11 games of Jacoby Brissett is worth, not trading for and paying Jimmy Garoppolo whatever he's going to want. I just don't know who's going to do it. You watched the Seahawks last night, and it's like, man, that's Geno Smith. That's the guy. Drew Lock is the guy. That's tough. But I also think if you're the Seahawks, it's like, you don't openly say you're tanking, but you're probably going to see what you have with Drew Lock and Geno Smith in hopes that you can get one of the quarterbacks in next year's draft instead of renting Garoppolo to mess up your draft position because he's going to win a game or two more than Lock or Geno Smith would.
Right.
So I just don't know who's trading for him. Now, if he gets cut and you can go offer him $2.5 million and be like, here, take it or leave it, man, and compete for a starting job, that's that. I think they waive him. I think they hold on to him until August 30th, though, because we've seen scares. We saw the Watson thing. We saw Zach Wilson. Yep. Saw Zach Wilson go down. Just weird things happen, and the Niners aren't going to probably let him go with 11 days left until final cuts. Like they're just going to wait at that point, I think. So I think that's kind of how it goes. August 30th, he'll get let go at final roster cuts, and then he'll be onto his own devices.
Right. And that final roster cut, because I think you explained this a couple weeks ago, but just that's where it was. What was it? It was if he's on the roster week 1 or something like that, more money is guaranteed or whatever. That they're just
all of it.
Yeah. So and right now, if they cut him before week 1, it's just the dead money, isn't it? Like $7 million.
$1.5 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. The injury guarantee is gone. He cleared the. Gotcha. Yeah. He's cleared. So, yeah. So final roster cuts August 30th. They have to cut it from 80 down to 90, and yeah, that's just it. If they keep him, can they afford it? Like that's the thing is the argument for keeping Garoppolo is, well, it's just money. They can afford it. But it's like he doesn't have a playbook. He's not he doesn't even know the Brian Greasy, the quarterback's coach. He's disconnected. He is Matt Barrows was on our podcast on Candlestick Chronicles and said, for all intents and purposes, he's no longer a 49er. So they're not gonna there's a human dynamic to take into play.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, can they fit him under the cap? Sure. Have they planned for that? Definitely. Is Jed York gonna come out and say, yeah, we have no problem keeping yeah, of course they're gonna say all that.
Right.
But realistically, is that what you want in your locker room?
Right. Like
their locker room has handled a lot of turmoil. They handled last year as well as you can handle it, but you got to break that off. That's got to be gone. Like it's a clean cut separation, and they have an opportunity to do that here in the next 11 days. So I don't know why they wouldn't take that.
And Kyle, on the flip side, the entire league knows their situation. So why why would I trade? You're going to cut him in about 10 days. So why would I trade and pay him $25 million? So
that's the big thing is when you hear people talk about the Browns, they say they don't have interest in trading for him right now. And it's like, okay, go look at the Browns' first 4 games. It's like Carolina and Atlanta's in there. It's not a hard schedule. So let's say the Browns yeah, we want Jimmy, but we want to be able to negotiate him because once he's cut, his contract is ripped up. He'll sign a new contract. He's an unrestricted free agent.
Right.
So instead of trying to negotiate this deal down from $25 million, when he's a free agent, they can go, yeah, hey, come in here. We'll pay you $5 million or whatever. Jacoby Brissett starts the first 3 or 4 games until he's ready, until Garoppolo's ready. and then Garoppolo takes over for X amount until Deshaun Watson gets back in week 13.
Mhm.
Like, they could do that, pay him less probably, and not have to give up an asset to do it.
Yeah.
And every team knows the Niners are going to cut him. So there's not an urgency to trade for him, I don't think.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about the drama that was there last year, and I know the Garoppolo thing has been, I mean, it's kind of like pushed off to this way off onto the sideline on its own field. Is there any other drama really that this team is dealing with, or do you think this is a team that's sort of laser focused and they understand what this season is about?
I think it's that. I think it's the latter. Just the way they're talking, the way they're operating, they very much seem like a team that went, okay, got close last year. Here's the 5 things that went wrong. Here's the 5 ways we're going to fix those things. And I haven't, outside of the Garoppolo thing, which I don't even think is drama, right? Like, if it was, they wouldn't have him in the building.
Right.
They wouldn't let him throw on the side. So I think if it was an issue, they wouldn't even open themselves up to that. But no, they seem to be in a very, very good space. And it just, I'm a big vibes guy, and the vibes just kind of feel
The curator of
Right.
vibes.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what? I agree with you 100%. Jesse brought up a topic that I want to get your opinion on before we get out of here. He said, looked at the 49ers roster. He said they probably have 5 spots where they have a top 5 guy at that position. And we were trying to think, and he said, you know, Debo wide receiver, Warner at linebacker, Bosa on the defensive line, Trent Williams on the offensive line, and Kittle at a end position. So we were trying to think, are there any, they're not the only team, but how many other teams off the top of your head can say that? Like, we got 5 spots, maybe more, that have top 5 guys at this position.
The Buccaneers might.
Mm.
The Rams, I think you could make the case, maybe.
I think there's a lot of teams with 4. Like, we came up with the Raiders. I think the Raiders have
Yeah, the Raiders might be
3,
really
4.
good.
It's like playing spades. 3 with a possible 4, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Maybe the Chiefs. Yeah.
Chiefs. Rich talked about the Chiefs. Yeah.
That's a fun question. No, that's why I don't think it's outrageous. Like, when I was not down on Lance, but I was definitely a little more pessimistic, just because it's like, man, if he can't complete layup throws, I don't know how they're gonna move the football. But Chris Canty, the former NFL defensive lineman, was on our show this week, and he played for the Giants during the RG3 season in Washington in 2012. And he said he's picking the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl. Chris Canty is, because he's like, Kyle Shanahan's a genius. Like, he's going to figure out how to generate yards. He's like, we had a good defense in New York, and we had no idea what they were doing on offense. Couldn't figure it out. And that kind of stuff. And then you see Lance, he looks a little bit better in their preseason game. Okay, he looks a little bit better against the Vikings. And it's like, man, he really doesn't have to do a lot because of what you just said. This is a loaded roster.
Right.
And if he is an average quarterback, if by the end of the year we're looking at Trey Lance as a 15th, 16th, 17th best quarterback in the league, like, they have a chance to go to the Super Bowl. Like, we've seen that. That's kind of the standard for this team.
Yeah.
And I think this roster is better than it was last year, even with the question marks on the offensive line, even missing DJ Jones in the middle of the defensive line. I just think this is a team that is primed to be really, really good.
I'm saying it right now. I have no problem saying. You guys heard me say, I expect the expectations for the Sacramento Kings. Are you in this drought? You at least get in the play. That's the expectations. I'm not afraid to place expectations on these teams. With the 49ers, I'm expecting 11, 12 wins this year. If they don't win 11, 12 games, and they're healthy, if they don't win 11, 12 games, disappointment. You should not go 10-7 with this roster if you guys are healthy.
So here's why I think I've been saying 10, because you have to allow for Trey Lance to struggle early, and struggle like he loses them a couple games with a, big third down spot. He overthrows a guy or has a couple of bad interceptions. Like, you have to allow for that, where they lose a couple games early where they're like, man, they should not have lost that game. But then I think on the other hand, you also have to allow for him getting better as the season goes on.
Right.
They play the AFC West. they play. So that's 4 really tough games off the top. I'm a believer in the Raiders this year. I think getting adults in the room there is going to help them a lot. They have the Buccaneers on the schedule. It's another really good team. They have the Rams twice. That's 7. That's almost half their games now, where it's like, man, those are legit playoff Super Bowl caliber teams. That doesn't include the Cardinals, who they faced twice. The Seahawks have given them fits forever, so we'll see if the Seahawks might be the worst team in the league this year. But I mean, there's just a lot of what do the Dolphins look like? There's a lot of games on their schedule where it's like, man, that could wind up being a really good team. So
hey Kyle, I appreciate you, being cautious. We're gonna smash them boys, all of them, right? We're gonna smash them. Niners is doing
17-0.
Let's smash them, man. Kyle, man, we appreciate you tapping in on us. Always good to talk to you, my man. Always good, man.
Yep,
We'll be